Hi, class. This is going to be a little bit of a longer one because WordPress is really something I work in a lot. It's just a platform that is really good because it is so large that so many people contribute to it. It's open source, and there's so many boards that you can ask questions at, and so many plugins that you can use for free that I don't have to build. So, I prefer that because it's very easy to customize. The interface of it is a little clunky looking because, yes, it's open source and free. It doesn't look as slick as Squarespace, but there are ways that you can alter WordPress way better than Squarespace or Wix. So there are other content management systems like Cargo Collective or Behance I'm mentioning here. And now we don't know if we have all these drag and drop kind of editors, WYSIWYG editors, why do we even need to learn the code? Because if you want to do something a little bit more customized, you still need to know how to look up and change it in the code. So as a designer, I think it still pays if you know the code at least, or at least you know what you can do with it. So as a designer, you also need to prepare the content. That means it's good to know all these other skills like understanding your users and how to present it in a nice way so that it's like a pleasure to look at your website. Then you need to be really good at the collaboration with the clients. I think that's a big part of a work of a web designer, that you have a good contact with the client. You can explain things well so they don't feel like that they're left without having a decision. But of course, you want to make it seem like all of it was their decision. But sometimes you need to kind of guide them and explain to them what the best options are from your experience. And you need to work together in teams and like maybe lead some teams. That would be great. And sort of build on actually improving, making better websites and better code and using better typefaces, for example. It's a good way to be part of these groups, and you need to listen to what the client wants because maybe you're so fixed on what your needs are in this that you don't understand what actually the client, or in the other case, that the people that want to use this website actually want. So it's good to listen to that. WordPress is a website creation tool, and it's open source, it's free. You can download it from wordpress.org, and it's written. It's also a server where you can host websites, so don't confuse the two things. One is a paid server, and that works just like any other web server. But also the wordpress.org is a free content management system. PHP is the language that it's using, and I can explain to you that it's not really a real language. It's still using HTML files, but the way the files are structured is a PHP system. Open source means everyone can build on it, everyone can see how it's built, and everyone can sort of change and suggest it. So if it's not a closed system, so it would be very hard for a hacker to embed some kind of code because everyone can look at the code and can point out the mistakes or the vulnerabilities. WordPress.org is the free program that you can download to build WordPress. And then there's WordPress.com. It's a file server just like any other web server. And you can see WordPress is very popular. 30% of the web runs using a WordPress server. This is a typical dashboard. You can see on this posts and pages, and I'll get into that a little bit more as well. And there are different plugins on the left side, and you can see different tools. Usually you have a theme where you put your files and your designs, so you can switch around different themes. It comes with like a few standard themes. There are a lot of free plugins or plugins that are paid for some fee that you don't want to rebuild like a whole booking calendar or video or streaming platforms, which would be way above your programming level. So there are already so many existing plugins that you could use that you don't have to spend a lifetime building. So that makes it really useful. So PHP is something that's used from a server side, and it's used to build creating a database where all the information is stored. This way you can easily build into a search engine for your website, which you couldn't really do on a plain HTML website. So it's always using this database to get all the information, and it stores each information that you give it back into one table cell in your database. And both generate, at the end, they both spit out the HTML back onto the browser, which is the language that the browser can read. The basic system of that PHP is that don't repeat yourself was the mission here, that if you have a header, you just call in the header.php instead of having to program a header on every single page on your website, or especially useful for navigation where you have, let's say you have the navigation in your sidebar. All you have to pull in is the navigation and the sidebar, so you don't have to change it on every page. Like when you make one change in the navigation, it will automatically update every page that's pulling in that navigation.php file. So you can see here that's the structure of WordPress, and their archive pages, for example, is highlighted here. Those would be all the pages when you do a search, and it would give you the results. Here, for example, there's a footer.php, or the header, or the sidebar. It's all pulling these files together into the main file. And that main file that you're building is actually the page.php. The database is SQL. Sort of create the database first in your file and link it to your website. The loop of the page starts with having that header, then the content in between, and then the footer. And it's using all these different PHP files to pull in that information. There's a difference between the posts and the pages, because the pages are not displayed in your loop. On a blog, like a page is sort of the about page where you go to, that's a static sort of page that doesn't change, but the blog is using the posts that are updating from the most recent to the oldest. These are the tags that you use to pull in these PHP files. It's just as simple as having the brackets and then the looking for the PHP with the name. So this is what it sort of looks like. And if you have the posts and the loop on the top, then while you have them and find them, display them with like a header 2 coming up here, displaying the title of the post. Then there's some metadata that it's looking for, like a date when it's posted. I actually kind of don't like to display these dates because unless they are sort of relevant, it kind of very quickly outdates your website if you do that too, unless you post all the time, of course. In case there are no posts at all, it would just say, sorry, no post match your criteria. There's several themes you can already buy pre-built out of the box. Usually there are a lot of free ones, there are some paid ones, and some you can use that have already built in e-commerce pages. If you don't want to set up everything, it could be an advantage of my favorite soccer team, but I'm logging into the admin part of WordPress. It's always the URL and then /wp WordPress -admin. You log in with your username and password, and I even added a capture plugin because I'm kind of paranoid of being hacked into. And since 1/3 of the web is running on WordPress, it's kind of a common target of spammers to look for these WordPress sites, and they always use admin as a user most likely, and then some like password as like easy passwords to guess. So these are the pages that I have on my website. So they're like the about page or a cart page or a shop page, kind of the static pieces in. And then I have the posts that I keep in my blog and updated projects, sort of projects that I build on. And you can see this is what you get editor, where you can sort of edit it. It doesn't look exactly the same because it doesn't even load the formatting of the typefaces. But I can also switch it to an HTML editor here. You can see that this is pure HTML, just text, which might be even easier to edit in that because you can see all the little spaces in between. If you make the width 100%, this picture will stretch by default to the widest that you have set your I'm still using sort of a container layout here. It doesn't go beyond a certain width, this picture, like no matter how much you stretch the browser. Then you can add tags for surging, and this is then what it looks like at the end. You always have to update, and when I have a list of an archive page here, I can see all the ones that that came down. But I just noticed that the last one with this bottle from Khadija didn't show up in any of my categories in my archive pages. So I'm adding it, and I think I find it here. I'm putting it into projects, and then I have to go back again. Oh, not projects. Did I change it to? I guess I must have changed it to blog, which I would say, yeah, because it's more of a personal project. I press update, and I go into view the post, and then I go into my blog, which you can see on the top is now category/blog, and everything with that category would show up, and you can see it's on the top here too. So now I'm going back to the dashboard, and I see all the pictures that I can load. I can just drag and drop these pictures in here. WordPress will automatically create a thumbnail size, a medium, and a large size, so you can use it depending. You can set up functionalities that on a phone it wouldn't even load the large picture, which could be very useful. All these different platforms that work within WordPress. WordFence, I mentioned, is a good security. Yoast is a tool where you can track the traffic to your websites. With WooCommerce is really great because you can do a shop. Now, when you build this WordPress, you need to have a server because you need to have the database, and databases are always hosted on a server. So it makes sense once you build it, you want to keep it sort of still local, because otherwise you have to drag the file back and forth to the server every time you do a change in your design process and then reload. And then there's this issue with that browsers keep things in cache, like they load the fonts and then they just keep that in some kind of folder so they don't have to reload, which makes sense on a real life. But if you design it and you change the font, it could be really annoying to get rid of this cache, because it would still show the old font that you don't want to see anymore because you made that change. So if you keep it local, you can make a fake server, and that's a program called MAMP, or WAMP for Windows. And it pretends to be a server. So it has a real database and then all the files, and it doesn't keep the cache because it's on your computer. It's immediate. It loads much faster. It doesn't have to go back and forth through the internet. You don't even have to be on an internet connection. So I really encourage you to install this MAMP. It's free, as long as you only have one website to work on, and otherwise you can just change it in the preferences. You can just point the folder to the next project if you have more than one project going. So I don't think you have to actually buy the pro version unless you're working on WordPress websites all the time. I don't even have the pro version. I think the free version works totally fine. And then you can work locally, which will make it much easier and faster to work with. So this is a look at the SQL database. It's also a little bit annoying to look at, but you can see that each one in this database, on the left side, there are all the different databases that I have on my server for different websites. You only would have one, but on the right side, you see there are tables of information that keeps all the content, and that's where it's pulling the information from. So the support is really great on WordPress. I mentioned it has a very large documentation where you can look up the way it works. It was very easy to install an events plugin or the music player and tag all the musicians that she worked with. I could even sell tickets in South Africa using Rand as a currency. There was a plugin even for that. These are some of the websites I built in the last couple of years. On the top, I use this as an example for the colors before. It's a couple of doctors who wanted their radio show archived that they did in the 80s. In the middle, there's a journalist. I'm updating her TV appearances almost on a daily basis. On the bottom is a portfolio site for a stylist in Paris, and I'm building on his portfolio website. So on lynda.com, there is a new tutorial where you can learn how to build WordPress themes called WP Rig. I'm myself still taking this course because it's brand new and it mimifies the code. For example, it checks it with different tools. It really offers a better performance and faster loading of everything. So that's a great way to build a website. I'm learning it myself right now, very excited about it, and I hope you look into WordPress too.